What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. If you guys are hanging out with me for the first time, do your boy a favor, drop a quick like for the video and subscribe to the channel. Well, guys, I got a lot of positive feedback from one of my more recent videos, and you guys were asking for more information about, how to get going, especially if you're a little bit older in life. But this really applies to anyone regardless of your age, and it's about building wealth, generating passive income, and not being tied to your day-to-day job, your 9-to-5 job. If you're like me, you found yourself in a situation where you realize that the stress associated with having a single source of income became overwhelming. And you realize that, or at least I realized that, when you have a single source of income, your whole life is predicated on that one job. And this is why so many people have so much stress related to work, because they realize that, hey, my boss has me by the balls and I don't like that. Or maybe you find yourself in a situation where, hey, we used to be able to work from home and now we can't because the boss all of a sudden wants us to come into the office, and that freaking sucks. Well, that's how I felt. And I don't know if that is you, but that is me. And so I spent quite a bit of my life, quite a bit of time. In fact, all of my free time is generally just out of my own personal interest, formed around figuring out different ways of generating additional streams of income, passive income, active income, but any type of income that is not necessarily tied to this one source. And the way I see it is, the more sources you can generate, the less dependency you have on your 9-to-5 job, eventually to a point where you can retire whenever you want. And I realized that you don't have to retire at 65, thankfully. We don't have to do that. That's what they taught us in school. Oh, work a good job, put in your hours, you get to retire at 65, right? Screw that. And if you think about it, I don't know if you guys remember, they actually used to say you could retire at 55, but they kept pushing this date further and further out. But the thing I don't like about that is that the more you push this date out, the older you get, and theoretically, the less the less healthy you are, the less physically fit you are, and theoretically the less time you have on the clock. So I would rather retire early with as much passive income as possible. So how do we do this, right? Well, investing in the stock market is one way. Starting side hustles is another way. Online businesses, yada, yada, yada. But I want to talk to you guys today about how investing 100 grand in SCHD could be completely life-changing, right? And you got to think that there's so many different ways to invest in the stock market. In fact, there's many successful and safe investments that you could make investing in the S&P 500. And you could invest in specific industries. Matter of fact, you could actually invest in the total U.S. stock market, or you could invest in different types of individual stocks. Now, don't fall for the value trap like I did. I invested in ticker symbol VZ, I think, Verizon. They had a very high, very attractive dividend yield of like 8-point-something%. And what I realized is that while the dividend was great, the stock price was going down. So I was really getting cheated. I was getting my dividend, but the price of the stock was going down. So there was no capital appreciation. In fact, it didn't even maintain my capital. The capital was eroded because of a variety of factors. So I've learned my lesson from that particular investment, and I want you guys to learn from my mistakes so that you don't make the same mistakes, and you can become so that you can be on your way to building wealth at a more rapid pace. Now, but in today's video, I want to take a look at how investing 100 grand in SCHD could potentially be life-changing over time. And know that when you have a very high starting yield, oftentimes that's kind of a trap. And I'm probably going to go into that in a future video, not in this video, but I want to really break that down so you guys can understand and learn from my mistakes. Now, if you haven't already, learned from my previous videos, I do like to invest in dividend stocks. I like the idea of building passive income and, utilizing the power of compounding, right? Now, this is not the only way I like to generate income, but it's one of the simpler ways. And I feel like, if you can just create so many different ways of generating income, the simpler, the better. You have all of these different streams ultimately paying you. And to me, that is the freaking goal. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that I don't invest in growth stocks, because I actually do. In fact, I got a number of growth stocks, but dividend paying stocks are kind of like near and dear to my heart. Now, if you're looking for like a more hands-off approach to investing, you could definitely invest in ETFs, which are exchange traded funds. And you could think of them basically as like baskets or groups of stocks, right? And there are literally thousands of ETFs to choose from. And I wonder if I should film this video in the pool. It's kind of hot out here. But anyway, there's like thousands of ETFs that you can choose from. In fact, some are actually focused on the S&P 500 and the total stock market, right? But there's also some that are focused on more specific industries, which we have been discussing. Now, in fact, there's actually ETFs that are based on specific types of stocks, which is precisely what SCHD is, which, by the way, SCHD is the Charles Schwab U.S. Dividend ETF. Now, I want to discuss this a little bit more in-depthly with you guys in terms of SCHD and how investing up to $100,000 over time can create life-changing wealth, right? Now, before I actually get into this thing, please, like I said, do your boy a favor, drop a quick like for the video. Also consider subscribing to the channel. And let's go ahead and get into this. Now, why do I like SCHD? Well, it's one of the more well-rounded and diversified ETFs across the board in terms of being invested in different industries, being a low-cost ETF. It avoids very, very hefty fees which will erode away at your earnings. Fees are literally working against you. So you want to have those fees as low as possible, because guess what? Even if your investment isn't yielding positive that year, your fees is still going to hit you. So the last thing you want to do is have like a flat year and you get hit with like a 3% fee and now you're negative 3%. Not cool. So I love low cost ETFs that avoid these expense fees, these very high expense fees. Now, with a great dividend yield and a very strong dividend growth rate, pay very attention here, guys. Very close attention here. This is what I didn't find with Verizon. They didn't have a very strong dividend growth rate. They had a very strong, solid starting growth rate. But for me, that was a trap. And I got burned. And I don't want you guys to get burned like I did. So SCHD, it's got a very impressive performance compared to the S&P 500. And speaking of performance, more importantly, the S&P 500, like one of the best and safest ways to invest long term, the S&P 500 is actually made up of 500 of the best US stocks. Now, SCHD, on the other hand, they invest in a lot of these S&P 500 companies, although not all 500 positions, which actually makes it a lot easier for the fund managers to manage. But even though they're not investing in all 500 S&P 500 companies, this particular ETF literally goes toe-to-toe with the S&P 500 over the past 5 years. And so this really sets the stage for what I want to share with you guys today. And in fact, it creates a very compelling argument for the power of compounding dividends, right? Now, just to kind of refresh you guys' memory, like the power of compounding dividends happens when you receive a dividend from a specific stock or an ETF and you reinvest the payments into that security. So you don't just take those dividend payments and go buying Louis Vuitton bags and Christian Louboutin red bottom shoes, running out there and buying that fresh new M3 BMW. I mean, like you could do that, but that's not how you build wealth. You can do that later on. But for now, we're trying to build wealth. We're trying to get out this rat race, right? So basically, you want to reinvest your payments back into the stock, back into the ETF. You keep buying more shares with the money that they're paying you with, right? And you keep growing this snowball. And this process creates an increase in your share count. It increases your share count. So you just keep doing that, right? Now, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a tax guy. I'm not a lawyer. So this is just my own personal opinion. Make your own decisions. But as this specific ETF or dividend stock raises their dividend, you benefit from both a higher dividend rate and an increased share count. And this really accelerates the compounding effect, and it builds a dividend snowball that could literally gain some serious momentum over time. Now, generally speaking, this is a little warning. Generally speaking, the dividend income is usually going to be a little modest. Ain't going to be brag worthy in the first couple years. But if you maintain patience and consistency, delayed gratification, it's kind of like, you know, back, I don't know if you guys ever had this, saw this experiment where they experimented with kids, and they would give a kid one marshmallow, like right now, or two marshmallows if he just waited like 10 more minutes. And this is literally like a legitimate experiment, and how many people literally do not take full advantage of the benefits of delayed gratification. But this is literally delayed gratification on steroids by not just cashing out the money, the checks, the income that the dividend ETF is paying you, but taking that money and reinvesting so that each new payment becomes larger and larger. And you can buy more and more shares, and you get larger and larger payments, and the compounding continues and continues. So, you know, this is why I always, you know, kind of always get this question. And so here's my answer. Like, is dividend investing just for retirement? Well, if you're trying to harness the power of compounding and creating a retirement plan, including like early retirement, it's a good reason to invest in dividend stocks. But I'm also using this power of compounding for other reasons. In fact, the great thing about dividend stocks is you can use this power of compounding and reinvest and reinvest and reinvest back into the stock. But at the same time, let's say you needed the cash. Maybe you don't reinvest that quarter. Maybe you don't reinvest that month. You take the cash out and you spend it. And then, you know, maybe you spend the next payment. But eventually you turn it back on and you get that compounding effect working overtime for you once again. So I like the flexibility that dividend paying assets offer. Now, of course, everybody has to start somewhere, right? So, you know, whether you're investing in, just $100, maybe $1,000, maybe even $10,000, you know, this is a process that definitely will require some commitment, some delayed gratification, and just staying focused over the long period of time. And by doing so, you will eventually reap the rewards of, more dividends, which is, I think, what we're all after. Passive income through dividend payments. Heck, passive income through anything. But right now we're talking about passive income through dividend payments. And as a matter of fact, there's a storm coming through. I'm gonna have to change positions. But let's just say you invested like $10,000 worth of SCHD today, right? Today, the ETF is yielding a dividend of what, 3.74%. So that's like a dividend income of about $374 based on your $10,000 investment. Now, SCHD's per share price. Hey, babe, can you grab this the pool vacuum out? Thank you. My bad, guys. So, where was I? Yeah, so SCHD's per share price of roughly it's about $70.50 something cents last I checked. It would allow you to purchase an extra a little over 5 shares within the first year of dividend payments. Now, this is pretty huge, guys. And, you know, if we think closer about SCHD, they have this, like, you know, 5-year dividend growth rate of like 15% every single year. And this is on top of their 3.74% dividend yield. Now, before we even like go any further, let's talk about what is in SCHD. Like, how are they pulling off? How are they able to pay out these payments, right? So the top 5 industries, along with their respective exposures, they've got industrial sitting at about 17%. You got healthcare sitting at about 18%. You got consumer defensive at 14%. You got what else you got? You got financials sitting at 14%. Technology and technology sitting at about what, 12, maybe 12%, about 12% on technology. So fairly diversified, right? And if these collectively, all 5 sectors, they make up about 74% of SCHD's holdings. Now, if we look at the top 10 positions within SCHD, this is where it gets interesting, right? So these positions, they're 99%, they're 90% companies that you probably have heard of, right? PepsiCo sitting at 4.5%. You got Broadcom. Unless you really know IT technology, you might not have heard of Broadcom, but they're sitting at about 4.5%. You got Merck and Company. They were huge during the pandemic, and they will always be. Basically, I mean, I think they'll be huge for a very long time, just because it's based on healthcare and drugs and whatnot. Coca-Cola, everybody heard of Coca-Cola? They're at 4.5%. Home Depot, 4%. Cisco Systems at 4%. You got Texas Instruments, they're at 4%. Verizon Communications, they're at 4%. Ambev, they're at 4%. Chevron, they're sitting at about a little under 4% as well, right? Now, together, these top 10 holdings make up about 42% of SCHD in its entirety. So almost 50% of SCHD is coming off these top 10 holdings. Now, some people like to do things on their own. They don't necessarily want an ETF. So if you want to do it, if you want to manage your own individual stocks yourself, but you want to maybe to create a more concentrated version of SCHD, heck, maybe you just buy these 10 stocks on your own in the ratios that you choose. That's totally up to you. I just figured I'd throw that out there for you guys. But ultimately, SCHD has a total of 1,100 positions. So there's a lot of companies in SCHD. A lot of companies in SCHD. And that, again, that dividend growth rate is a beast. Now, if you think about it, right? Let's assume a 12% rate of return, right? Slightly below SCHD's 5-year and 10-year average rates, right? This approach is to maintain a little bit more of a conservative perspective, or to keep the numbers fairly realistic for our example, right? Now, if we would apply that same dividend growth rate, SCHD's dividend payments would literally transform from a 1-year payment of $2.64 a share to $3.05 a share the very next year. Now, I know it might not seem like that big of a deal, but hear me out. In this particular situation, we're going to reinvest these dividends while, at the same time, we're not going to put in any more of our own money. So in year 1, as we just mentioned, our 142 shares provided $374 in dividend income. And this contributes to an additional 5 shares, roughly, raising our dividend income to $448 the next year. So literally, without adding any more of our own money, by reinvesting the dividends from year 1 on a $10,000 investment, it paid $374. Year 2, without putting any more money in, just reinvesting the dividends, it now pays $448 of additional income. And this income stems from both the increased share count and the 15% dividend increase. You guys, we only did 1 year. So I hope you can start to see the power of this compounding here, right? And, obviously these are hypothetical numbers, but, they draw upon the historical averages while kind of like staying on the side of caution with regard to returns. And prolonging this approach to the next 7 years exemplifies how dividend income can really just leapfrog from the initial $374 in year 1 to start paying you over $2,000 a year by the 10th year. Now, this is assuming you only put 10 grand in and you didn't put any more money of your any additional funds in. We can easily accelerate this process, but you gotta be willing to have a little delayed gratification, right? Now, this, you know, again, we're just talking about a $10,000 investment here, which may actually require a little bit of time to reach. You know, not everybody has 10 grand to start off with. I didn't have 10 grand to start off with. But by sacrificing, I was able to stash my first 5 grand. And like once I really focused, I was able to save 5 grand, like when I was a kid, in like 6 months. And that was as a kid. Like, I wasn't even 20 years old. So you can do this. But, you know, I chose $10,000 as an example just to kind of like show the snowball effect in your favor. And in this particular instance, you know, the concept revolves around making an initial $10,000 commitment without any additional deposits into your bank account. And this involves also reinvesting the dividends year after year. And so just imagine if you invested like 100 grand in this thing, right? And $100,000 depending upon where you are in life, might seem like a lot of money, and it is, depending upon what you're talking about. $100,000 for some people in a brokerage or an investment account, it might seem like a lot of money. But $100,000 for a car, it might seem like a lot of money, depends on where you are in life. $100,000 for a house, it's like nothing. It's like $100,000 is cheap. So $100,000 is really relative to what you're talking about, who you are, where you are in life, right? But just imagine you put 100 grand into SCHD, you know, and like think about it. Like, what's even better is that SCHD, it's like just one facet of your portfolio. Chances are you're gonna have a lot of other investments in there, right? And think about how important diversification is. So think about the exposure of the S&P 500 and individual stocks as well. It's a very gradual process, and you might not necessarily have $10,000 available for SCHD at the moment, but, you know, start with a smaller amount, say $100, and just build your way up, right? But the key to what I'm talking about here is just to start, right? And literally, this demonstrates just how contributing a modest amount every single year, every single month can start getting that compounding going in your favor. So, like, remember these scenarios. These scenarios are really theoretical, and the actual outcomes may differ. But the idea of this conversation is just to like share with you guys the power of compounding, specifically through a very favored dividend ETF like SCHD. It can literally generate some life-changing wealth. Now, I really hope that you guys got some value out of this video. If you did, please do your boy a favor, drop a quick like for the video. Also, subscribe to the channel, and drop me some comments down below. Let me know what you might want me to cover in future videos. I look forward to hearing from you guys on the next one, and you guys be safe. Take care.